Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Dasepo Naughty Girls, a nutty Korean comedy from 2006 that emphasizes sexual innuendo and sprinkles in some musical numbers for good measure. Now, describing the plot of this movie is a bit difficult because it really doesn't have one. The focus shifts to a number of different students who go to an outlandish high school. The film is kind of structured in a way that a number of the characters will have like a short segment that is dedicated to them specifically, almost like a short film that is related in some way to this high school. And then that character will pop up again in someone else's segment or in the sequences that feature the entire class. But if forced to choose like a main character, it would probably be the teenager named Poor Girl. Yes, Poor Girl. That is what she's called throughout the film, because she's poor. Now, one of the things I like most about Dasepo Naughty Girls is that it is very memorable. Whether you like it or not, you're probably not going to forget it anytime soon. This is very quirky stuff. The opening scene is actually a great representation of the entire film. One person finds out that they have an STD, and it creates a cascade of chaos and anxiety in the classroom, which culminates in the reveal that the only virgin in class is the guy who is literally a cyclops with one eyeball in the middle of his head. Then we get a very colorful musical number during the opening credits. Now, if you enjoy the first 10 to 20 minutes of this film, you'll probably enjoy the rest of it, even when the pacing slows down a bit. Now, I've mentioned before on this channel that I'm generally not a fan of raunchy sex comedies. There are exceptions, of course, but those films tend to rely on low-hanging fruit, which I call, for their humor, which basically means that they rely on thoughtless, gross-out sex gags that are really not very funny. If you want an example of this, check out the Korean film Sex is Zero, which I greatly disliked. I would describe the sexual content in Dasepo Naughty Girls as charmingly perverted. There are really no sex scenes in the film at all, actually, but it does use tons of sexual references without becoming obnoxious. So that was kind of a big positive for me and helped me to enjoy this film more than most, sex comedies out there. There's a certain, innocence to this movie that makes it more pleasant than you might expect. And much of that innocence is expressed brilliantly by our lead actress, Aukmen Kim, who would go on to star in films such as Thirst and The Villainess. Now, I'm still a little bit confused that her first name is sometimes spelled with a V and other times with a B. So my DVD for Whispering Corridors 4 Voice says that her name is Ok-vin, as does IMDb. But Asian Wiki says that her name is Ok-vin with a V, and Wikipedia lists both. So I'm just going with Ok-vin for now. I had the same problem with Soo-young-im because for the last 15 years, IMDb and Asian Wiki show her family name with an L in front of it. And Wikipedia shows her name without the L, but shows Lim separately as an other name that she uses. So it just confuses matters because it insinuates that there's two different pronunciations that are acceptable. So this is the problem we have in the US sometimes with figuring out how to pronounce names properly, especially when you have completely different spellings available, online. But in any case, Dasepo Naughty Girls is the movie that made me a fan of Aukmen Kim. And that's despite the fact that Whispering Corridors 4 Voice is my second favorite Korean horror film of all time. And I had seen Voice before Dasepo Naughty Girls. But there's no question that Kim's performance in Dasepo is more memorable than her performance in Voice. Her character of Poor Girl is entertaining in ways that are difficult to describe. She acts so defeated by life all the time, but there are flashes of temporary shock and life in her eyes every time she comes across an uncomfortable situation. She has brilliant comedic timing in this film. She really does. Every second she's on screen is just pure joy for the viewer. After watching this movie back in the day, I vowed to watch everything that this woman does. That's how good she is in this. And she has a little mascot that clings to her back everywhere she goes in the film. But I'll let you discover who he is and what he represents for yourself. There is a splash of color that's used at times in this film, which is very kind of eye-popping. This includes some of the sets and clothing. The walls of the classroom, for example, are bright yellow, green, and stuff like that, which I liked. Now, in terms of flaws, okay, I mentioned the structure of the story earlier, and that will be the biggest problem for most viewers because it does feel clunky at times, like a compilation of related skits instead of a story that flows very naturally and fluidly. Certain story arcs just seem to kind of drop off after a while. I like this film quite a bit, but even I had some problems with the story structure. In regard to execution, though, Poor Girl's story and most of the comedic skits work well. But some of them do not. The one I like the least is this big conflict near the end of the film, which comes completely out of nowhere. And I think it's too silly for its own good. I really didn't find it to be all that funny. I thought the film could have ended with a stronger and funnier climax. But, I must emphasize that if you're in the mood for a nutty, imaginative, enjoyable sex comedy, check out Dasepo Naughty Girls, because at the very least, you're going to remember it for a while after you watch it, whether you like it or not. So you know what you're getting into here. But I do think that most people will enjoy this film, just because it's so, charming. I find this film to be charming. It is available for rent on YouTube, and there are some DVDs floating around on eBay as well. And as always, we'll see you next time.